Final Fight and Streets of Rage 2 are some of the finest beat 'em up games ever, but which one's better? Well, we're going to take a look, and that's coming up next. Hey guys, welcome to One Coin Only. Now, if this is your first visit and retro gaming is your thing, be sure to subscribe and click the bell and you won't miss a single upload. Now, Streets of Rage and Final Fight are two very beloved beat 'em up games, but in order to find out which one is better, we're going to have to go and start from the beginning. First, let's take a look at the game's storylines. In Final Fight, Mike Hagar is a beloved mayor who has brought Metro City's crime rate down to record low levels. The Mad Gear gang is in disarray, trying to bribe him to overlook their criminal activities, and when he refuses, they brutally kidnap his daughter Jessica. The war against crime has now become personal, and Mike Hagar has to save the city and rescue his daughter at all costs. The story of Streets of Rage 2 continues from the original game. Calm has hit the city for a year after the original defeat of Mr. X, but by some mysterious force he has returned to life and now once again taken over the metropolis with his evil crime syndicate. He kidnaps Adam, a main character from the first game, in order to entice the vigilantes once again into a final showdown. While both storylines are good, Final Fight does seem a little darker and more relatable. While the storyline for Streets of Rage 2 is also good, its supernatural touch is a little harder to connect with. Overall, Final Fight just makes it across the finish line with a better story. Next, we're going to talk about the main characters. Final Fight gives players a choice of three characters: Mayor Mike Hagar, a former professional wrestler who is slow but has a ton of brutal moves; Cody, the boyfriend of Jessica, who is quite well rounded and balanced. Then finally we have Guy, Cody's backstabbing friend, who has a bunch of quick and flashy moves but hits like a marshmallow. He's kind of a douche. As for the enemies, there are quite a few common uniform characters, but what is unique is that most of them have names of rock stars or professional wrestlers, which is a nice nostalgic trip, with some of them even being lookalikes. Streets of Rage, on the other hand, gives players a choice of four characters to rescue Adam: Skate, his brother who fights with a flashy hip-hop style; Axel, a former cop and bodyguard who is well-rounded; Blaze, a dancer who's incredibly agile; then finally Max, a wrestler-type character much like Hagar from Final Fight. The enemies and bosses are well designed, but most of them are not overly memorable. Taking all things into account, Final Fight barely wins this category for best characters, even though I really hate Guy. Next up we have the graphics. This is a harder one to judge. Final Fight has the firepower of its arcade machine to provide a dark and somewhat realistic looking experience with memorable locations such as the subway and the Bayside. Streets of Rage 2, on the other hand, while not as graphically impressive, is running on the much more primitive Sega Genesis hardware and still does an amazing job of providing an atmospheric adventure with many awesome locations. This is one of the best looking games on the Sega Genesis, and taking all things into account, I think it's only fair to tie both games in this category. Next we have the music and sound. Final Fight has an intense and dark soundtrack that is unique and hard to put into a genre, but Capcom did an amazing job at capturing the correct atmosphere. I have many favourites here, including the second part of the Bayside level where players take on Abigail, one of the scariest bosses in the game. The sound effects are great, and all the attacks feel high impact, and the defeated enemy's size is satisfying. Streets of Rage 2 was composed by Yuzo Koshiro and has a large mixture of memorable hip-hop and dance tracks that has players rocking through the whole experience. Most memorable of all for me though is a melodic and peaceful ending sequence, which is a nice touch to end such an intense beat 'em up game. The reception for Streets of Rage 2's soundtrack was so high that composer Koshiro was invited to make many nightclub appearances to play the music. The overall sound effects are good, but the attacks and enemy voices are a little more high-pitched than I would have liked. Overall, Streets of Rage 2's soundtrack is far superior to that of Final Fight, and for this reason, it wins this category for best sound. For the last category, we have the gameplay. Final Fight's fight mechanics are incredibly fluid, and each character features a different moveset and special move to keep things interesting for extra playthroughs. The weapons can be found throughout the game are also fun to use, and heavy weapons such as pipes hit hard. The weapon system for Streets of Rage 2 is very similar, but its main characters are where the game really stands out. Each character has a vast range of combinations, 2 special moves, and even a special charge attack which can be chained with other moves for maximum damage. While both games excel in the gameplay department, for its character versatility, Streets of Rage 2 wins this one. Overall, you can see we have two brilliant games here that excel in all departments. However, it's hard to top the nostalgia of Final Fight's characters or the music in Streets of Rage 2. The difference maker is actually in the value. Final Fight only has 6 levels, or even 5 if you play some of the console versions. Streets of Rage 2 on the other hand has 8 intense levels, a fully customizable options menu, and an extra character to replay the experience with. For those reasons, Streets of Rage 2 wins as the best beat 'em up game of its time. So what did you think of the review, guys? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you once again for joining us to One Coin Only. If you like what we do, please share, subscribe, tell your friends about us, and we will see you next time.